race fans, Puka's out trying to figure out how to get his cat hat with a curve in it. So he's not here. Probably going to take him a little while. Hopefully he's back next week. Actually, he's with the kids tonight doing dad things. So, hey, kudos to him. But Ryan Aho, the Burt Lehman, bringing you episode 146 of the One to Go show. Hey, how was your weekend, Burt?
The weekend was good. I went to races Friday night, Saturday night, and I went to a Brewers game on Sunday afternoon. The Brewers lost, but I did get to see Aaron Judge hit 2 home runs to bring his total to 59.
I tell you what, he's getting her done. That's for sure. They're gonna have to pay that guy a little bit, huh?
Yeah, he turned down a huge contract prior to the season or at the beginning of the season, and he bet on himself, and it looks like he's going to come up big on that bet on himself.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. So episode 146 brought to you by our friends over in Watertown, South Dakota, Dirt Track Supply. I'll tell you what, great folks. They do so much for racing. Ron Anderson, Trevor Anderson, whether they build the aero chassis that's, this guy here, Jeremy, you're killing me, dude. Like, he was running second, Burt, and he lost the handle coming out of turn 4 in a qualifying night that would have put him row 2 in the Wissota 100. Tough break, but he had a fast car. That aero chassis was fast. So with that said, they build a good car, but if you need parts, safety equipment, tires, whatever, just advice, whatever. If you need anything in the racing realm, get a hold of those guys over in Watertown, Dirt Track Supply. They've been doing it for a long time, and they do it very well. So I'm looking forward to seeing them guys here this weekend. We'll talk more about that in just a little bit. So let's get started. What do you got?
Well, we have the blast from the past segment by United Health, and Puka's much better at doing these lead-ins.
we get ourselves a pretty host, right? You see all these sports shows that got gal, she's pretty, she's doing the host part, and then we can just kind of talk and comment. So I tell you what, neither one of us are professionals. We just have a lot of fun.
But we're at episode 146, and I do not have a 146 or a 46.
I have some 46s here. Okay, I'm surprised you don't. I actually am very surprised. You should have 46s, multiple drivers. But before we get to that, impact health sharing. So fans, if you or anybody that is paying too much for healthcare, if they literally don't have healthcare because they don't want to pay that much, if you're self-employed, shoot me a text, shoot me a call. I've been able to help a ton of people save a lot of money. And when I say a lot of money, the average cost for a family is about $600, just right around $600 per month with a $2,500 family deductible. I've seen people paying as high as $1,500, $2,000 a month. So that's a lot of money you can keep in your pocket to go spend on your race car stuff, because that's a lot more fun. So with that said, number 46. Okay, I'm gonna roll back. Guy I didn't know very well. I should have, right? I think he was a Finlander, Jeff Fogenen, but he passed away tragically here within the last year. A guy that ran a lot in the Midwest mod division. I think he ran a mod for a little bit, but he ran over in Superior, he ran over in Proctor, and he won some races. It took a few years off, lost his life. I'm not sure on the details. Maybe somebody can post in the comments, but I know he's a guy that was very well liked by a lot of people at those 2 racetracks. In the late models, car owner, okay, George Shields owned this car. Multiple drivers, 46 in the late model division. Here's a few people that I know for sure drove this car, and there was probably more, right? Lance Matthews drove the 46. Steve Larson drove the 46. Ron Jones had a stint in the 46 in the late model. And I was just notified of this by our friend Dustin Dowdy, who, you need to get your butt back on the racetrack, dude. I'm sick of watching you commenting all the time but not racing. You got a lawn ornament in the shop there. You got to get that on the track. But Rich Bishop, who's a super stock legend in, I think it was 1999, also drove the 46 for George Shields. So George Shields had a lot of different drivers in that car, a lot of familiar faces that ran different numbers. But do you remember that car? I remember it being white with a blue 46 on it. And I remember mostly Steve Larson and Lance Matthews, but of course, Jones had a short little stint, and so did Bishop.
Yeah, I don't remember that at all. So that would be why I couldn't think of a 46 like you thought I should. Unless
Man,
there's other
late
46s
models.
out
Be a
there.
late model guy. I mean, come on, be a late model guy. So let's jump on to the next segment. Some, fans, share your memories. One memory I have, I picked on Ron Jones. He was my hero, especially in the modifieds, in the super stocks. But he jumped in the car, and I remember him getting his ass whooped by Chrissy Oliver. Remember the Tri-City buggy car Chrissy Oliver ran? Well, she whooped him at Cedar Lake, and I'm like, man, I thought you were good. You just lost to a girl. Now it turns out there's a lot of girls winning races, so it's not that uncommon anymore, but she ran pretty good and whooped up on him at Cedar Lake. So let's get into some high points of this last weekend.
Yeah, our top 5 moments of the week, brought to you by Brad Parson at Egg Solutions. And it's harvest time in this part of the state. I don't know what it's like over there, but it's harvest time is picking up big time over here.
Yeah, it sure is. It is in our direction too. So if you're in North Dakota, South Dakota, northwestern Minnesota, get a hold of Brad, which congratulations, Brad finally took the most expensive lawn ornament and brought it to a racetrack this past weekend, right? So he finally got her done. He practiced at Fergus. He had to work, made it over to Cedar on Saturday. He's like, I was hoping there was only going to be 20 cars. I just rolled right into the feature. He had to go to an LCQ, transferred in, made the show, but good to see him finally back out on the racetrack. Maybe a little bit more of them here in the next couple of weeks. But farmers, for racers by racers, give this guy a chance. I'm going to have some numbers here on our next show, and they're staggering, right? We're talking about the numbers, and I don't know much, but the numbers he was telling me was very impressive. High yields, right? Which increases your profitability, which we're all talking about. He's got all kinds of stuff that you can put in your current spray packages, and you're going to want to give this cat a try. I mean, let's face it, we're all willing in racing, right? We're all willing to go out there. I'm going to try a different spraying, different bar angle, different that. Let's apply that to farming. Give him a call. Quit giving all this money to Nutrient Egg Solutions. They haven't got enough money already, right? Give this guy a call. Give Brad Parson a call. There's numbers right here. We'll post it in the link, but he'll take good care of you. And he's got some great products out there. So make sure to get a hold of them. So let's jump into what we got.
Yeah, number 5. I watched most of the features of the WISSOTA 100. But it sounds like there's a lot of action with lots of rollovers, and one kind of stood out over the other one, over all the others.
Another one in a sec. We'll talk about one of the Midwest mods. My buddy Andrew Inman, he rolled over too. That was self-inflicted, tough deal. But the most violent rollover, probably one of the hardest rollovers I've seen. Chuck Swenson went over hard. It was at the start, I believe, it was a heat race. It was the start of a heat race on Friday. And they come out of turn number 2, as you can see on the video, and all hell broke loose. It was kind of hard to determine who caused this deal, because everybody was going everywhere. And he went over, I think it was 4-ish times, and he went over hard. One hard hit on the ground. It sounds like he had to go back in, do some doctoring. I don't know the details. Hopefully he, heals up fast. But I mean, he's been in a sprint car, Bert, right? So he's rolled over plenty. But let's be honest, right? Chuck, you're not that young anymore. You can't be doing that shit. That's for the young guys, right? Not that we want to see the young guys roll over either, but that was a nasty one right there. And kind of a guy that got snake bit in that deal, Mike Gresseth. We'll talk more about that in just a little bit, but really tough one for Chuck Swenson. Glad that he was able to walk away from that.
Yeah, that's the most important thing, that he was uninjured in the crash. You can replace cars, but you can't replace people. So that's fortunate. And then number 4, cop capitalizes on SpaceX misfortune for the second year.
Taryn, you're killing me. You're killing me, right? So last year at the legendary 100, Taryn Spacek had it won. He's got a good hot rod. That TRC number 22, very fast race car. Okay. Had it won last year, literally come through 3, off of 4, broke his gears, lost at the line. Kyle Kopp gets the win. That's 2021. 2022, SpaceX jumps out to the lead. It looks like he's got this under control. Now, Kyle Kopp may have had a faster car. He did. He had a really good car, but SpaceX was pretty sporty. Birdie got into lap traffic and kind of did one of these deals and flat out drove into a lapper, spun out and lost the lead. Kyle Kopp goes on to win that thing. So tough break for Taryn. I mean, he's a hell of a racer. He's got a big future ahead of him. Just a tough break, but congratulations, Kyle Kopp. That's, he said in Victory Lane, I don't win much. He doesn't get a ton of wins. He runs really good. Probably the best season he's had, but back-to-back legendary 100s. Tip of the cap to the 26.
And number 3, Mike Nichols, Rex to Checkers.
Wreckers to Checkers. So this is another one of them rollovers, right? So I believe it was night number 2 that he rolled over in the heat race. I believe it was. There was so much racing, forgive me. But in a heat race, Mike Nichols went upside down hard. And he thanked a lot of people in the racing community because I remember rolling over at the 100 and I had several teams coming over helping me get my stuff back together. He had the same thing. A lot of people coming over, getting that 67 back together, goes back out the next night, wins the qualifying feature, puts himself on the front row, and he had a solid top 5 run. For a little bit, I thought maybe he was going to win that deal, but came up a little bit short. So great rebound for the 67 to roll over one night, win the qualifier the next, and have a top 5 finish at the Wissota 100.
And number 2, we got to talk about street stocks. I actually did watch this feature. I watched it right before the show, and it was an exciting feature to watch. My driver that I picked started 27th and worked his way up to the front, and they were 3 wide for second when the caution came out, and I wish the caution wouldn't have came out because I think maybe things would have been a little bit different. But anyway, a little bit of drama.
What was the caution for? There was another caution.
Well, this was before the one that we're going to talk about.
Right.
But yeah, a little bit of drama at the end of the race before the weather came in.
For sure. So I'm going to start with a huge congratulations to Braden Brower. I picked him before the season as my favorite, and I changed it, but I picked him as my favorite to win the national championship. And then he just went into a little bit of a slump, switched cars, got faster, a pile of seconds. He's ran good, but he just wasn't winning like he wanted to. But a 17th to first spurt in the qualifying feature to put himself on the front row. That was impressive. That was a hell of a run. That was a wow moment right there. And then Braden Brower goes on to win a highly action-packed Wissota Street Stock A main. So maybe not quite the season that he wanted, right, overall, but man, that's a big one to win. So really cool to see him get that done. But we also talked about Justin Vogel, who I'm just going to be honest, that dude's a racer, right? And what I mean by that is he was on the podium night 1. And how the format worked there, Bert, is if you finish in the top 8, the first 3 nights, right, all the qualifying nights are national point nights.
Okay.
Kyle Lakoff, huge lead, but mathematically, Vogel was still in it. He's like, I might as well give it a try. So he was on the podium, was going to be starting in the front couple rows on the inside if he took that spot. He says, nope, I'm out. I'm going to try again tomorrow. Goes out, wins night 2, which put him outside of the front row for the 100.
Okay, so if he would have just kept his starting spot, then he wouldn't have raced those nights and he wouldn't have got those point shows. Okay.
That is correct. So then he takes, instead of taking outside row number 1, he says, if I still got a shot, I'm going to give it all I have to try to make it happen, right? So on Friday, he goes out and literally gets bounced around like a ping pong ball in the heat race. I think everybody got a piece of him, right? Didn't even make the qualifying feature on Friday. He got tore up in the heat race. Bad deal. So now it's going, all right, now I got to start kind of in the back of an LCQ instead of actually being on the front row for the feature. This sucks, right? So he comes through the LCQ, starts 27th, as you said. At one point, he kind of slid. He took the lead for a brief moment, didn't he?
Yeah.
And he's up there battling. Like you said, the caution comes out, right? And I'm telling you what, the rain was coming. They're like, we got to get this show in. They knew the rain was coming. They knew they were going to have a big delay, and I don't know what happened, but Greg Josie from North Dakota broke something. And as you can see in the short video here, looks like he went to pull off the back straightaway, which I hate wall openings anyway, right? They're horrible. Shit happens at the wall opening. It's not a good deal. But technically, you shouldn't pull off to the right. You shouldn't pull off in that wall opening during a race. It should be pull off. It is what it is. But he didn't get all the way off the track. He didn't get all the way off. He's still sticking out on the racetrack. No yellow. And they're coming like a full head of steam. That lead pack, Justin Vogel, working the outside of somebody. That car ducked down, and here's the back of that car sitting there, and he teed him up. And man, I mean, it was. Let's just say this: I am glad nobody got hurt, killed. I mean, he could have very easily said, "I'm broke. I'm pulling off," and unbuckled himself. Doesn't sound like he did, and he hit him, and like Vogel's car was destroyed. His car was destroyed. I don't know how bad they were. Now, the best thing that happened is they threw the checkered right there. They said race over, because, I mean, they can't penalize Vogel for hitting a car that was parked on the track that they should have thrown a yellow for. So they had to throw the checker, right? But with that said, that's a donkey award. I don't even know who to give one to, right? Because it could be the flagman, right? It could be the corner guys. There's officials that are standing in that wall opening that are there that should have been like yellow, yellow, yellow. Why on earth was there not a yellow flag? It just flabbergasting to me that they let that happen.
Yeah, and I mean, there's plenty of time because, I mean, if you're watching the race and you're listening to the announcers, they said, you know, so and so is slow. Not sure he's going to make it off the track. Yes, he's off the track, and that's when the leaders were about at the flag stand. So, I mean, it was a full half a lap that they raced with that car sitting there. And, I mean, I know I'm at races a lot, and, you know, a car will slow and pull off the track most of the way, and a yellow will come out, and, you know, some fans will get upset. Why'd you throw the yellow? They're off the track. But this is exactly why you throw the yellow. Safety has to come first.
Absolutely. But at the end of the day, Braden Brower, job well done. Absolutely amazing street stock racing. I mean, they put on a show. Wissota Street Stocks, IMCA stock cars, they're all awesome. That class is just fun to watch, and it was no different here at the Wissota 100.
And our number one spot for the week is we have a huge upset that took place at the Wissota 100. And yeah, I'll just let you get into that.
Biggest win of the Wissota 100, and it's not close. I mean, and this is no disrespect to any other driver that won, but let's face it, Jimmy Mars, he's expected to win. It's Jimmy Mars, right? And I'm not saying he's going to win every race, but he's in the conversation. Tyler Peterson in the conversation. Braden Brower, that's no surprise. That cat wins a lot of races, right? Midwest Mods, Travis Sowers won a ton of races at Fergus Falls, former national champion. But in the super stocks, I don't think there's a person on planet Earth that would have said somebody other than 7A is going to win. If 7A loses, if Shane Sabraski loses, it's because he broke, right? That's what everybody thought, that, including me. All of us in our picks had Shane Sabraski. Trevor Nelson, man, shocked the world. Because let's face it, Bert, the knock on Trevor Nelson for the last several years is, yeah, he wins a ton of races. Come race a big race over in Minnesota and Wisconsin. He's good in South Dakota, right? He wins at Aberdeen. He wins at Miller. Not that they have terrible cars, but they're not Shane Sabraski, Dave Moss, Timmy Johnson. They're not that group, right? And I guarantee he's heard that year after year after year, right? Well, guess what? He outdueled the 7A. It was his moment to shine. By far the biggest win of the weekend, Trevor Nelson in the 71 ride, putting that affordable in victory lane. And I tell you what, on a big stage with all the top cars there, congratulations, Trevor Nelson. That's a huge one right there.
Yeah, well, I was watching that feature, and I mean, he earned it, because probably with about 5 laps to go, it looked like he wasn't hitting his lines, but I think that was his line. He'd go into 3 and drift all the way up to the wall, looking like he's going to hop the cushion, but the cushion gave him such a run off of 4 that he was able to maintain that lead, and he kept that line for the final laps. And, it was an impressive win. I mean, because you figure, a younger driver racing against, the 7A, at the end of the race, or might get a little nervous and, not hit your marks, but he hit his marks and got the huge win.
He did. That was a fun race to watch. And I'll tell you what, if that's Kevin Burdick or Terrence Spacek behind him, they're going to rough him up and try to get by him. Shane Zabrowski drives with a lot of respect, but tell you what, hats off to Trevor Nelson. I mean, that's a respect win. That's one right there that says, hey, I don't just win in South Dakota. I win big races against the top drivers. And kind of makes me a little upset with Watertown, right? My favorite track over there, Casino Speedway, because if they had super stocks, he'd be in the conversation, but they don't, so he's not. So let's jump on.
All right. Moving to our trackside reports, brought to you by buyraceshirts.com. And you went someplace to a race this week, didn't you?
I did. My sure bet last week was Dave Dulciak is going to win the Street Stock Special. We're going to lay an ass whooping down on the boys at Sycamore. That was my sure bet. Well, he did. But Ryan almost got himself in trouble. Ryan almost went to jail. Ryan was almost ready to burn some houses. Okay. So this dude here is like the king of seconds, my buddy Dave, right? King of seconds. Like, he's been the bridesmaid all year long. He's got like 872 second place finishes, 0 wins, right? So he goes out there in time trials, qualifies second quick, puts him on the pole for heat 2, wins that by like a half a track, literally whooped the shit out of him. I'm like, we're pretty good. And the guy next to us is like, you want to slow down? I'm like, we weren't very good. Like, the car wasn't very good. He's like, what do you mean? He won by half a track. I'm like, fast cars were in heat 1. He was in heat 2. He was fast, but it was lacking a little bit. And the guy's shaking his head like, really? Right? So we made a little adjustment, went out there for the feature. He started 3rd row, drives up. This is a 50-lap race for Street Stocks. It's their invitational, right? They had a fuel stop deal at the halfway point. Literally right before the halfway point, he's battling for the lead with the guy that wins all the races. They get together and there's some damage on the left front, right? And they come into the fuel stop and he's like, how's my left front? I could tell it something wasn't right, but I'm like, I ain't telling him that, right? Because we ain't got time to fix it anyway. We ain't gonna fix a ball joint. Like, you can't fix a ball joint in a 5-minute fuel stop. I'm like, oh man, it's good. He's like, oh, okay. Because if I would have told him it wasn't good, it would have been in his head, right? So I'm like, no, it's good. You're good, right? So he's like, all right. So he goes out there and he drives right by him like his shit was broke. I'm like, damn, where'd this guy come from? Like, he's bolted. He drove at one point straight away lead, Bert. Yellow comes out in the closing laps and he still won, but it was 4 or 5 car lengths. He drove away. He was good. Comes across the scales. Now, first of all, they got a measurement from the bottom of the cross member, on the front stub to the ground, 5 inches. Weird rule. Nobody else has that. WISSOTA don't have that. IMCA, UMP, nobody has that rule, but it's a rule regardless, right? So comes across the scales. We're all down there and they're like, you're disqualified. I'm like, yeah, okay, that's a good one. I thought they were messing with us, right? And we're like, yeah, no, you're disqualified. I'm like, what do you mean? Nope. Frame to the ground measurement, too low, illegal. I'm like, bullshit. Let me crawl underneath that. So I crawl underneath and I'm like, hey, before I do, let's roll the car ahead. Cause I wanted to, when you pull ahead and stop, it brings the front down. So I'm like, let's roll it ahead and push it back so we can get it to normal. And I crawl underneath there. He measures it and sure as shit, it's like less than a quarter, maybe an 1/8 inch, maybe too low. Right. And I'm like, that's bullshit, right? We're looking, the left front's bent. There's bent parts on the left front from a wreck, right? The front of the car is down. They're like, don't matter. You're still illegal. I'm like, this is a freaking shithole racetrack, hillbilly, inbred. Like I was like, I'm like, I'm gonna go burn the grandstand zone. No, I didn't tell him that because I didn't want to go to jail for terroristic threats. But I'm ready to kill somebody. Like I'm like, how do you disqualify a car when there's left front damage? I mean, that's like that would be like somebody on. Well, Billy Engelstad almost did this at the 100. Matt Auckland smacked the wall, right? And he's like, that kite's too high, illegal. Another tech official's like, Billy, let's use some common sense here. You can see there was damage. Like Matt Auckland, not happy. He may have used some vulgar language towards Billy in that deal. Like common sense has to apply. But you can't, how do you disqualify a car when it's obvious? You look at it, there's bent parts, right? It was unbelievable. I'm like, cost him a championship, right? Because he was only a handful of points out of first to go back to back for track championships, cost him the win at the big race. It's like, dude, he won. I'm still right, right? My sure bet, still my sure bet. He won that race, regardless of what that idiot tech man said. Like, I want to go over and kick him in the face because he's a moron. Like, some of these tech guys are completely stupid. Like, common sense has to come into play. If there's obvious damage, it's unbelievable. So, Bert, that brings me back. Ashland, ABC Raceway. I'm there for a Challenge Series race. My buddy Chongo's there pitting for me, right? We get together with Don Kopp during the feature or during the B main for the Challenge Series in the late models. My upper A-frame is broke in half. They measure my wheelbase, short wheelbase disqualified. I'm like, my A-frame is broken in half. My tires tip back, don't matter. I'm like, are you really? Another time at Ashland, Red Clay Classic on the podium, measured wheelbase, illegal. Okay, really? Like, let's measure your stick. Well, their stick was off. They remeasured it when the stick was all right, and they're like, oh, you're good, my bad. Really? So these tech guys, it's like they're sometimes, not all tech guys, there's some good ones, right? But it's like some of these tech guys, it's like they're looking to disqualify. So, oh, I got you. It's like a tech guy's job is to make sure that everybody's playing by an even playing field. Nobody's cheating. Nobody's looking for an unfair advantage. If it's something stupid, common sense like that, come on. I mean, let's have common sense has to play into this deal. Disappointed. It's still a win. Disappointed for Dave, but man, that deal sucked ass. I'm still mad about that. Oh, hey, one more thing on that. So the guy behind him comes across the scale, right? Rolls his car up. He's not even on the platform. He rolls down, gets out of his car, which the whole car comes up. The big cat too gets out of his car, and they measure it. Yeah, you're good. I'm like, bullshit. Like, he's not even in his car. Oh, he's good. I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, let's just say that first and second got DQ'd in that race. So let's just say that, because unbelievable. I mean, it's just, it literally just grinds my gears that he got that win taken. We've been working his ass off all year, getting shit figured out. Finally had a good hot rod. I'm telling you what, he's going to whoop their ass again next week. It just is what it is. You went racing this week, Bert. You went to 2 tracks. You went to a Tar Baby track and a dirt track. Tar Baby track used to be a dirt track, right?
Yeah.
So
I was looking for a dirt race Friday night, went to Marshfield Motor Speedway, and it's not dirt anymore. No, I knew it wasn't dirt anymore. But yeah, that was the first time I've been to the track in Marshfield since the early 1990s when it was still dirt. They made it a lot safer than when it was a dirt track. There's a lot more concrete barriers separating the racetrack and the pit area, because I remember when I was there, it was just wide open from the racetrack to the pit area with just like these railroad ties separating. And they actually had a fire truck and an ambulance from a local township come there, which was a good improvement from the 90s when I was there, because they just had a station wagon with a light on top of it as their ambulance back in the early 1990s. So they had some really good improvements in that regard. But yeah, racing was good. I mean, for asphalt, there was some drama there after the races. The the crowd was very sparse. Let's put it that way. There wasn't a lot of people there. And after the race, it was twin 55 lap features. It was for only crate late models could race. And the promoters trying to introduce an affordable crate division for late models. But anyway, after both of the features were over, he called an all driver meeting. I thought, oh, well, I have a feeling I know what's going to happen here. And yeah, this has been all over Facebook, so it's not like I'm sharing a secret or anything. But yeah, the promoter didn't have the money to pay the purse, so he informed the drivers that. So yeah, that was not a good deal.
Is that a donkey award?
Well, yeah, I would say probably.
Had that happen to me once. I did. I got a letter in the mail a month later saying, "Sorry, we filed bankruptcy. You don't get paid for this one." I'm like, "What? I'm broke. I need that money."
So yeah, I mean, it was supposed to be, if you qualified for each feature, it was $500 to start each feature, and I think I read on Facebook that the two winners are getting $604, and I don't know how much the other people are going to be getting.
Oh boy. Oh boy. So it's $500 hairs, not dollars.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that wasn't a good deal in that regard. But then I did go to Autogamey Speedway in Seymour on Saturday night for the Dirt Kings race. Well, it was a fall brawl race for that track, and the Dirt Kings were racing there. And Brett Swedberg won the Dirt Kings feature, and he definitely had the best car there. Brad Miller pulled out to a big lead, but Swedberg ran him down and passed him clean. Nick Avalanche started 9th and finished 3rd, and then Troy Springborn finished 2nd. So Nick is probably a little around 30 points ahead of Troy in the standings now, with 2 races left, the 2 races at Mississippi Thunder in October. So yeah, it was good racing there. Mike Mullen had his late model out, so it's good to see him in the late model. He was also there in his modified, and in his heat race, he made the pass for the lead on the last lap, and the car that he passed in 3 and 4 just drove it in way too hard. And I mean, you can't even call it an attempted slider, because he body slammed him. And Mullen went into the wall, and the car that body slammed him was able to keep going and cross the finish line, but he got black flagged and disqualified. So,
ouch! A little bit of drama,
a little bit of drama there. So, but yeah, it was good racing there. They had 170 some cars in 7 divisions. Always have to have so many divisions in these year-end specials, it seems.
Puka must be running that program there. 7 ain't enough for Puka, so I like that place though. I've seen some really good racing at all the games. Never been to any of those tracks. I want to get up to Shawano. I want to get to Seymour. Out of all them tracks, I really like Seymour. I've seen some good racing over there.
Yeah, and it was a fun race to watch, and it's always fun watching Nick on these types of tracks, because it was a race where 2 of the corners, the fast way around was a different lane than the other 2 corners. So 1 and 2, you had to ride the cushion. 3 and 4 down low by the tires, and it's not just. It wasn't just the fast all the way around on the top. It was, you had to search a little bit for the fastest way around the track. So it's always fun watching drivers searching for the fastest way around the track.
Yeah, for sure. I love that kind of racing. That That is absolutely my favorite kind of racetrack for sure. So a lot of other events happened that we weren't at, but there was some big stuff going on, so let's jump into the local recap from Blue Line Brews. So let's face it, Bert, I've turned into a morning person sometimes, right? So I got to drink a little Java. So you might as well drink Blue Line Brews. Go to bluelinebrews.com. They got K-Cups. They got several different blends, whatever you like. And a portion of their proceeds go to the families of injured and fallen officers. Just a great program from Blue Line Brews. Check them out, and you'll be glad you did. So where should we start, Bert?
Let's start with the Wissota 100.
First of all, did you watch? I mean, there's a lot of racing, right? There was a lot of racing Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday into Sunday, right? Did you watch much?
I watched all the features except for, what is it, the Pro Lights or whatever they have?
Mod
4. Well, it's funny because I was watching the replay and it's like, okay, I'm looking for the modifieds. So I went to a certain point in the video and it's like, oh, okay, I found the modifieds. So that they waved the green flag and I'm listening to my computer and it sounds like snowmobile engines. It's like, wait a minute.
Did you see who won that though? The Mod 4s?
I didn't watch.
Puka's little brother.
Really? What?
Yeah, TB81, Tommy Bowden, flat bill hat and all. Not really his brother, but that's Puka's brother. Still guy. That's Puka's boy right there. Got it under the Mod 4. So I'll do a little recap on the main events, and we got some fun facts. We'll just talk about some things that I saw. Late models, the Iceman, Jimmy Mars, back-to-back years, winning the Wissota 100, $10,000 payday to the 28. Modified.
Let me do the modifieds. It was so good to see Harry Gant come out of retirement and win that race. That tells me right there he's been off racing longer than me, so I need to get a car. That was a good race. Yes, that was a good race.
And quite honestly, Tyler Peterson was the class of the field. He won night one, put himself on the pole, had a good car, and he's like, I'm in. Like, he already had the points locked up. So last year he ran all 3 nights. This year he's like, I'm in, I'm on the pole, I'm good, I'm golden. Went on to hold off some hard chargers to get her done to win the Wissota 100. His first Wissota 100, pretty cool throwback deal. Of course, the one TPO, his dad's a huge Harry Gant fan. It's kind of funny. He's like, I don't even know who Harry Gant is. I remember the Skull car, but I don't remember Harry Gant. And he did the 33 TPO for his dad. Just kind of, just out of appreciation.
Yeah. And what was cool about that race was, the top 3 drivers, they were all running different lines because Sabraski was down low, TPO was in the middle, and then Johnny Broking was beating down the wall on the high side. And I was a little taken aback by his post-race comments because I'm not sure who he was mad at. Was he mad at himself?
Okay, so first of all, in my opinion, hey, hats off, Tyler Peterson. I mean, that's a big win. That's a big win. I mean, let's face it, he's your national champion. To win the national championship and the 100, I mean, that's a great way to cap off an amazing season, right? Johnny Broking was Bobby Pierce, is who he reminded. He was fun to watch. I mean, he had balls of steel, just hustling the high side, banging the boards, and I talked to him leading into the week. He's like, I want this race. Like, he's been good. Last year, he came from like 26th to 2nd and actually slid for the lead, but got crossed back over. And he won the RV Tour race from deep, I think from like 6th row or something like that earlier this year. A couple bold moves in there, but super entertaining and fun to watch, right? So he's like, I know my car is good here. I want this race bad. Should have won. Nothing.
Yeah, well, I mean, he had some instances where he jumped the cushion or he tagged the wall a little bit that unsettled his car a bit, where he would lose some ground. So that's why I don't know if he was mad at himself, because I didn't think the other 2 drivers did anything to him. But yeah, I mean, he definitely is not afraid to express what he's feeling.
That's usually not him. I was shocked. I'm like, what the hell is it? Like past his bedtime or what? I'm not really sure what's going on here. Him and TPO got a huge rivalry.
Okay.
What's crazy is they both drive the same. They're both up on the wheel. They're both high side hustlers. They're Chargers, highly entertaining, fun to watch, right? And they just don't like each other. They got a little bit of a rivalry. So he and Tyler kind of was moving his line around. He didn't do nothing wrong. He drove a hell of a good race. Probably had stick signals from somebody moving him around on the racetrack. Why wouldn't you? You should have that, right? So he was kind of moving around, kind of blocking, and I think Johnny had to run a couple times, and it wasn't like a bad block or nothing. I think Johnny just saw it coming, lifted, jumped the cushion. So at first he's a little mad at like, oh, I feel like he was blocking me, but he was just more mad that he lost. I mean, right after that, he had a good car. He knew he had, like, every time he screwed up, he still charged right back into being in contention for the lead and then to jump the cushion again. And not only did he jump the cushion and lose the race, he fell back to third, let Zabrowski sneak by him for second. So I think it's one of those deals, right? We get critical of what people say in the moment, but when they're hot and they're like right there, you put a mic in their face. It's like, if you don't want somebody to speak the truth, don't put a mic in their face right after the race. It just is what it is. But great race by Tyler Peterson. Johnny Broking was the show. I mean, he was super fun to watch on the high side, really made that race interesting. But the mods, I tell you, they've been really good during invitationals. Yeah. There's been some good mod races.
And I mean, as far as Broking's comments after the race, I mean, I have no problem with, the comments that he said. Sometimes it's nice to see the emotion that drivers have. And actually it's interviews. I mean, let's be honest. Most interviews, you don't remember what's said during the interviews. You're going to remember this one. The one interview,
Zabrowski, right? We love you, man, but you're boring. Right? We need to get Shane Zabrowski pissed off in Victory Lane because like the world would come to an end. People would be like, "What just happened?" Like, so yeah, you're exactly right. That rock is good.
I mean, I don't remember how many years ago this was, but it was several years ago. But I still remember who the interview was of, and the gist of what he said was, when Buzzy Adams won the Punky several years ago and said, I don't know why everybody's so scared of Jimmy Mars and blah, blah, blah. Those are the interviews you remember.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We talked about the supers, Trevor Nelson getting it done, the street stocks, Braden Brower, and in the Midwest mods, the Cowboy, Travis Sauer getting it done. Old rodeo cowboy. I think he bull rode or bronco rode or something like that. Obviously in better shape than this guy, right? But he's won a lot of races around that place. Hard charging Lucas Rodin gave him everything that he could possibly handle, but just not enough. Travis Sauer getting it done. So overall thoughts. I have some different topics here to talk about with the 100, right? As a fan, you didn't watch much of it, right? But
no, I watched the features, but as I was watching the features, it's like, this track is a pretty good track. I mean, it's very racy, good racing surface. It was hard for me to judge how many people were there because the stands are so large there. And they have stands on the back stretch and the front stretch. So I couldn't see how many fans were on the front stretch.
Yeah. Plus they had that whole parking area, right? That whole area. So day one, or not necessarily day one, we'll talk about that in a second, but day one of the real racing was Wednesday, and the heat races were awful. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be a disaster. I mean, it was bad. Like, it was bone dry, horrible in the first day, but they regrouped. The features that night were good. And then from that point forward, and the Mother Nature helped, right? But that place, when you get some moisture on it, you're right. I mean, it's like an old Cedar Lake. It's better than Cedar Lake now, but really good racing. Most of the races, most of the features were excellent. I thought there was a lot of good racing. And let's face it, they faced some challenges, right? They had weather come in, they had rain delays, they had to fight, through the weather. And hats off, they worked their ass off to provide a good product to the fans. And I don't take that lightly, because a lot of tracks would be like, hey, we'll just race tomorrow. They're like, we're getting this in. And not only did they get it in, but the track was good and race ready when they did go green.
When did they finish racing? Because I had heard that the first feature got completed at like 1:15 in the morning. Is that accurate?
Oh, exactly the time. Let's put it this way. I'm a night owl, and it was late enough that I was tired enough that I did not watch the last two features live, right? But I mean, I think there was a 4-hour rain delay.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, I'm not blaming them for finishing so late. I mean, yeah, I mean, you either run it and finish really, really early in the morning, or you postpone it until the next day and race during the daytime, and nobody likes daytime racing.
no, not at all. I thought that was overall, that was great. Some really good racing to be had. Another tip to cap for the WISSOTA Promoters Association for bringing back Victory Lane interviews, right? Because last year, none of the qualifying features got interviewed in Victory Lane. And I'm like, what are they doing? This year they did. So that to me, that's a huge, you got to give those drivers a moment, and they got their moment for winning that qualifying feature. I think that was fantastic. I'm glad they added that. That was huge. And hats off to Dirt Race Central. Dirt Race Central came in and they offered a great product, but also Ben, JC, and the whole gang. There was a whole bunch of people there. Sorry, I don't have all their names, but not only they were doing pre-race interviews, stuff like that. I thought that was pretty cool. So they did a lot of that stuff. JC Norgard did a great job, but also they kind of took over the social media for WISSOTA. So there was really good content on WISSOTA's social media platforms from the WISSOTA 100, and Dirt Race Central was responsible for that. So congratulations. Thanks a lot to them for all they do. I would like to see, with this big of an event and how big streaming is, I would like to see next year do a pre-race and a post-race show. Maybe if racing starts at 5, go up in the studio there, right in the booth, and go from 4 to 5, a pre-race show after the races. It don't matter, right? It doesn't matter how late the races are done. Do a post-race show. You go live on their social media platforms. I think that would be a good addition. It's something that maybe they can look at for next year. But overall, just hats off in all regards there. Another thing, something I thought was interesting. So the format there, right, is they run heats and A mains Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and the top 8 from each A main is locked in if they want that spot. Otherwise, they can opt out of it and race again. But the LCQ on Saturday was only the top X amount of cars, 16 maybe or something like that. Only the top 16 and points that didn't make the show were locked in. That's got to change, right? They nickel and dime everybody to death on this event, and there's really not. I mean, I get it, the weather, but there's not a lot of racing on Saturday. Just one LCQ per Class 1 feature. A couple more races wouldn't be a huge deal. I mean, if you raced there all week, you spent all week there, and you had a couple bad nights, didn't make the show, and your points were bad, and you're just like, well, you don't even get to run the LCQ. I would love to see the alphabet soup. And most classes, to be honest, don't have enough cars for a full alphabet soup anyway, right? Most of them were in the 40s or whatever, so one LCQ was enough. But Midwest Mods, go with a D, a C, a B, right? Do something like that. Give everybody a chance to make the show. I think that's got to change. That's something that should be looked at. I got a question for you, Bert. So there was a lot of geographical regions within the WISSOTA area that were not well represented at this event. There was not a lot. There was like 12 Wisconsin cars. There was like barely any northern Minnesota cars, right? So there was areas that just did not have a lot of cars. Would more cars be good or bad for the WISSOTA 100?
I mean, as a fan, as a race fan, I enjoy the drivers from the different regions converging together at one track to fight it out to determine who's the best. That's what I enjoyed the most about going to the WISSOTA 100 when MJ raced, and I, would go along and be at the WISSOTA 100. It would, back then I got all the dirt newspaper, and the names that I read in the paper, I could watch racing at that event, and that's what I enjoyed about it.
Yeah, in this event, we'll just take the late models, for example. South Dakota was represented pretty well. Most of their top guys were there, right? That central Minnesota area, most of their top guys. But you look at the Grand Forks region, that NLRA group, there was only a couple cars there. They had their big event the week before with the Sites Memorial, right? You look at the Hibbing cars, I think it was Massengill and Provenzino, I think might have been the only two. I don't think I'm missing anybody from up there. Wisconsin, they had, I mean, three of the best, right? Or two of the best, Jimmy and Pat Dorr, and then, up and comer Sam Mars. But, I don't know. I mean, on one side of it, they need to take what Dennis McCulley does, right? And do that for the 100. So what I'm talking about there is he runs the Fastlane Superstock series, and Bert, he literally reaches out to every single WISSOTA licensed Superstock driver and asks them to come to his events, whether it's text and call, Facebook Messenger, seeing them at the track. I'd like to see WISSOTA have somebody that represents late models, mods, supers, all the classes, and their job throughout the year is to contact these drivers personally and say, we'd love to have you at the 100. We would love to get you here. What do we have to do? What needs to change? What would make you want to come to the WISSOTA 100? Simply reaching out to drivers will get more cars there. It'll get more representation. And when more cars come, their aunts, uncles, grandpa, grandma, all that, they come with them. They have more fans. That's how you got to get that event big, is you have to reach out to these drivers. On the flip side, devil's advocate on this, it's already a long program, right? You run streets, Midwest mods, and lates, 3 nights. They add in the mod 4s at the end. If they added another 25 cars per class, it'd be crazy. There'd be a lot of cars. It'd be hopping, right? But it would be challenging, right? Because the track prep, they'd have to stay on top of the track. There'd be more work to be done there. The program would go longer. So then you'd have people going, oh man, the show goes too long. So that's the devil's advocate side of that. But I think ultimately it's the premier event for WISSOTA. They got to do what they can to get as many cars there as possible. Go ahead.
Well, how many super stocks were there? Do you know?
I don't have,
I'm just curious, because I mean, back in the 90s, when I went to the WISSOTA one,
half of that.
Okay. I mean, they got over like 150 or whatever back then.
But there's not many super stocks in general. There was 600-700 super stocks at the time. There's like 300 now. So
I mean, the one year when we went, there were 82 late models at one event, and I was like in awe. It's like 82 late models.
Right. And so the numbers compared to the glory days are down, but I think the numbers can get back up. It just takes a little elbow grease, right? I mean, let's face it, and the numbers weren't bad. The numbers were very comparable to last year. I thought overall, I thought it was a good show, but you always want to see more. There's always drivers like, oh man, I wish this guy was there. I wish this guy was there. But overall, it was good. And then of course Cedar Lake runs. They got the legend.
I was just gonna say, it's a little bit different because now there's the Cedar Lake race scheduled against it. But back then they used to have WISSOTA East and WISSOTA West, so the cars were kind of split up in that regard.
Right. So the first night they have practice on Tuesday, and they run the WISSOTA Pure Stocks and the WISSOTA Hornets. First of all, okay, I'm going to say this, and this is no disrespect to Pure Stocks and Hornets. Them two classes are important to the growth of racing. You have to have starter classes, and they sometimes provide really good racing, right? But those classes should not be WISSOTA sanctioned. All that does is nickel and dime them. That makes them spend more money that they don't need to. They shouldn't be running for national points. If they want to race a lot, great. Or if 3-4 tracks in an area want to get together, do a mini point fund for their drivers, great. But they shouldn't be WISSOTA sanctioned. I'm a firm believer in track rules for the beginner classes. Like I said, a few area tracks can be good. And that's what most of WISSOTA is. Most of WISSOTA, the whole region, then beginner classes are track rules. Only a handful of tracks really have them classes sanctioned, and they had 5 Pure Stocks and 12 Hornets. Yeah, you can't have that, right? Now let's a couple things here, right? A, they shouldn't be WSOTA sanctioned anyway. But if they are running them on a Tuesday, I mean, half the Hornets are 13, 14 years old. They're in school, right? And they got to drive. Mom and dad aren't going to take them out of school to drive halfway across the freaking upper Midwest to get to a race. Ain't happening, especially when they could win the feature and still lose money. They're like, we ain't doing it. We ain't going. That's like, if they're going to run those, it's literally, they don't get that huge of a car count anyway. Run them Friday, Saturday. Don't run them on Tuesday. I mean, because they ain't going to come. That shows. So that's got to go. And if you look at the pure stocks, the closest pure stock track to there is Bemidji, which is like 2.5 hours away. There's not even a pure stock track in that area that's WSOTA sanctioned. So a lot of things need to be looked at with that pure stock and Hornet deal. Another thing here, a little bit of inconsistency, Bert, on some calls here. Okay, there's a couple. We talked about that deal in the back straightaway, but we talking about northern cars. There wasn't a ton of them down there, and I was pulling for a buddy of mine, Tristan Labarge. I helped him as he was kind of growing up and racing. Had a rough weekend. He was on the podium, running third, battling for third there. Overheated one night, came back out, and he like flat out drove away from the field in the qualifying feature on Friday. He was gone. Yellow comes out, right? And I will say this, Tristan's going to be mad at me, but he's doing this wiggle. I get it. He's warming up the tires, but he warmed up the tires like all the way. It's kind of like I've seen other people start a race this way, and it's kind of a little bit, I don't know, gray area. I'm not sure what to think, but he's warming up the tires, and then just goes right into going green. That got him in trouble, right? Because he did that once, and the Jimmy Gullickson behind him kind of wowed up and just let him go, and he just flat out got a good start, drove away because he's like, what's he doing? But then on the next restart, Jimmy Gullickson drives into him, in 3, and then he does that wiggle, that warming up the tires, and Jimmy Gullickson flat out just dumped him, spun him out in front of the whole field. Literally, it was obvious. And Jimmy Gullickson, what he said in Victory Lane is like, well, you're playing games and you're going to lose. He did it on purpose. He spun him out on purpose. They give him his spot back. He goes on to win. Tristan's car is broke. They called it on him. His night's done. He's like, screw this. I'm going home. Come on, officials, you got to get that shit right. I mean, that was a terrible call. That was unbelievable. And then Gullickson had a little bit more drama, got a freebie in the feature too. So not sure what to think there. In the Midwest mod feature, the A main, they had a similar deal. Not the same, but it was coming for a restart and the whole field stacked up. And initially over the loudspeaker, they're like, call is on the 50. Cody Lee's going to the back. And I'm like, wait a second here. I'm going to screen video that and kind of watch it. And I got the video here. So you call, this is you make the call, fans, you make your own call. I looked at that. I'm like, if they're calling that on Cody Lee, like that is bullshit, right? Like he did not cause that. Bert, he was on, if you can see this video, he was on the outside on this restart and the whole inside row stacked up. He had nothing to do with it, right? The leader was kind of slow rolling, did nothing wrong. The second row and third row kind of like anticipated, but Cody Lee and I believe it was Nick Kaler, they left a space and they tried to time the start, right? Cody Lee did, and he had to hit the brakes and everybody kind of stayed okay on the outside. Kaler did the same thing. Everybody piled up behind him. Nothing against Nick Kaler. Call probably should have been on him. You make the call, you decide. Well, after a little bit, you know what they said? Well, the start cone was in the wrong spot. So we're just going to go ahead and call that on the start cone. And we're not putting anybody to the back. I don't know what Tom Nesbitt would have had a heart attack. It just is what it is. But is that their way of saying, we're not really sure who caused that, so we're just going to kind of like do this over? What do you think?
It's possible. I mean, I've been at tracks too where, they're supposed to call somebody for a caution, but then when they line up the cars, everybody gets their spot back and they make the announcement. We determined it was a racing incident, so everybody gets their spot back. It's like, what do you mean it's a racing? Somebody's got to go to the back.
Everything's a racing incident, right? So the last question I have for you is the opt-out rule. And what I mean by that is night number one, if you finish in the top 8, that's the inside 8 rows of the 3 wide start for the A main. However, you can say, you know what? I don't want that spot. Various reasons. One could be you're running for national points and you're like, I want 2 more good shows for national points. The other might be, I don't want to start 7th, 8th row, right? Like if you do the math, right? 7 rows is 21. So 8th row, right? If you finish 8th night 1, you're starting 22nd in the feature. So some people are like, I don't want to start 22nd in the feature. Some people are, I'm just happy to make the show. So I got some thoughts on this, but what are your thoughts? If you were a driver, would you be like, you know what? I'm in. I know I start 22nd, but I'm in. I'm just going to take my spot. Or do you roll the dice and say, no, I want to start further to the front? What would you do?
I mean, it kind of depends on the driver. You know, if it's a driver that is a okay driver, but making the show would make their year. Obviously, I don't care where I'm starting. I'm in the show.
Right.
But you know, if you're one of the top drivers, I guess I could see, you know, it's like, well, I don't want to start back there. I'm going to bet on my talent that I can, you know, get a better spot over the next night. So I'll take a chance. So, I think part of it depends on the driver and their situation.
So, and you know, I look at that and I'm like, okay, Maria Brooksick took her spot. She's had a hell of a year. She's got a fast hot rod. Mistake. I think she should not have done that. Dylan Nelson, 10-win season, won the Fastlane Superstock season. He started back in the nosebleeds. I'm like, Dylan, what are you doing? Mike Stearns, dude, we talked. I'm like, he's like, well, I didn't feel like I had a very good car. You would, if you would have ran 2 more nights or 1 more night, you would have probably had a better car, right? Mike Gresseth, right? We talked about Vogel. Mike Gresseth didn't even come on Thursday. So you hear people talking, man, you got to be there all week. No, you don't. No, you don't. Right? You could literally show up Friday, run the Friday show, win the feature, start on the front row of the WISSOTA 100. You only have to be there Friday and Saturday. That's all you got to be there. You don't have to be there all week. So he took the Wednesday show. He's like, I got too much work at home. I'm going to do that. I'm coming Thursday and Friday. Thursday, he gets 8th. I'm like, I wonder what he did. Because he's fast, right? He won the NLRA points 2 years in a row. He runs well at Fergus. I texted him. I said, Mike, please tell me you did not take 8th. Please tell me. He's like, that's the dumbest text I've ever read in my entire life. And he called me. He goes, no, I didn't take frickin' 8th. Like, I didn't come here to make the show. I come here to compete, to try to win the show. Well, it did him, because that rollover with Chuck Swenson, he got caught up in that, right? And he wasn't there on Wednesday, so he didn't have enough points accumulated. He still made the LCQ, but he started last, and yeah, it just didn't work out for him. But that's the mentality. Me, like you said, if you're a top runner, if you're like, I'm here to win, you can't start back there. I would rather not make the show at all than purposely go out there starting 24th, knowing, man, I hope I can get into the top 10. It just depends on a lot of things, but a couple people didn't work out for, and a couple people it did. So pretty good racing overall at the WISSOTA 100. Let's jump ship. Let's go over to the legendary 100. And first thing I'm going to say, speaking of jumping ship, your 2022 WISSOTA Midwest Mod National Champion went to Cedar Lake.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he has it locked up. You know, he has it locked up, and it's not like a cherry picking deal, right? Because they get a pile of cars. They had fast hot rods over at Cedar Lake in the mid. That class is stacked at either event. I just found that interesting. Jake Smith opted to go to Cedar. He did last year as well, with winning the Rookie of the Year. I think he ran okay. He wasn't contending for the win, but he ran okay. But I got in trouble for that, Bird. I opted out of the WISSOTA 100 when I won a national championship one year, and Terry Volz yelled at me at the WISSOTA banquet on stage. So that was he didn't really like that very much. So let's jump into the I guess the recap. AJ Demo, right? the two, I guess the two patriarchs of MB Customs, Jimmy Mars and AJ Demo, both went back to back. Demo dominant. Daryl Nelson, another win at invite time for the Hermantown Hammer, killed him in the modified. We talked about Kyle Kopp. Redemption win for David Swearingen, who won the Northern Nationals, but if you remember, he was like under a 16th. He had too many gaskets there, and I don't know, he took that gasket out. Shit might be faster. I'm not really sure. He just won the Legendary 100, so I don't think it really affected him. But I got a couple things, but what stuck out to you at the Legendary 100 over at the Cedar Lake Speedway?
Well, I didn't watch any of the racing, but I mean, we discussed on the show last week, and you posed the question over under of 20 late models, and I took the over. And so I checked my race pass on, what was it, Friday, or I don't know. And they had over 30 late models at Cedar Lake for that show. So you were a little wrong there.
I was way wrong. They the overall they had over 300 cars, 10 classes. You know, it is what it is, but they had over 300 cars. They had some really good race cars, so there's enough cars to go around for two big events, and that showed it this weekend. Another thing that stuck out to me, and so Cedar Lake Speedway, it's Cedar Lake, track's good. It's a good racetrack, but they got some drainage issues down in 3 and 4, Bert. For the last 2 years, I've seen Lake Superior down on the bottom of 3 and 4, and I was talking to drivers. They're like, "Yeah, it ain't good. You can't go to the bottom down there because you'll slip and slide all across the racetrack." Cedar Lake Speedway, please fix that. Like, just dig out the infield, get some drainage in there, because that is just that track is too good, too prestigious to have shit like that. I mean, I can see that on some podunk tracks or whatever, like Sycamore, right? They do that shit, right? You can't do that. You're the Cedar Lake Speedway. You're held to a higher standard. You got to fix that. Now, one thing I saw, Bert, that was, I don't want to say funny because I'll get in trouble, but in the super stock feature, right? Dan Nasulke curb stomped him the night before in a qualifying feature, and I'm like, he's winning this race. I mean, he's bolted. I think there was some contact with him and Spacek at the beginning of the race that hurt his front end and kind of wrecked his chances. But during the race, he threw a pretty dirty slider on DJ Keeler, okay? Like, pinched him right into the fence. Well, later on in the race, he did it again, but DJ lifted hard enough to not get into the fence. And finally, he did it again, and Keeler just flat out dumped him in the middle of the back straightaway. I mean, he spun him out bigger than shit. And the announcer, because remember, Cedar has the no-fault caution. I like Dan Nasulke, but this might have been a time where it was actually a good thing, because the announcer's like, well, I think that was payback for earlier in the race. You know, I guess what comes around goes around, and it'll all be good as long as, like, there's no action at the scales after the race. Because, I mean, it was flat out on purpose, right? Well, I talked to Dan. I'm like, rough night. He goes, yeah, you know, I got together with Taryn there, and then, boy, that 12 car spun me around in a circle. You know, that was, he goes, I just slid him. Has he never seen a slider before? I'm like, Dan, you may consider going back and watching that race, right? And rethinking that, because you got him good. Well, he texted me back. He goes, yeah, you were right. I had that coming. I reached out to DJ. That was my bad. He goes, thanks for the tough love, but yeah, I was a little aggressive on that one. But I'm like, yeah, that was pretty good. So, yeah, sometimes that, I guess, I don't say it often, but sometimes that no fault deal can work itself out.
Yeah, so, it sounds like it.
I know you watched Knoxville, right?
I watched Thursday night, and I watched the feature on Sunday. Yes.
Okay. Now, I watched exactly 0 of Knoxville, so just fill us in. What happened at the Knoxville Late Model Nationals?
Well, what can we say? Superman won again.
Never heard of
it. But no, I mean, Knoxville was, I don't know, it was strange this year. It just didn't seem to be as exciting this year. It didn't seem like cars were coming from the back and working their way to the front. I mean, the drivers made the comment too that Thursday night, the track prep, they made it too top heavy, that, you know, the top was a fast way around, and, you know, there really wasn't much passing because you just ride the cushion all the way around the track. And so it wasn't too exciting. But I was disappointed with, I mean, Mike Marlar's been so good at Knoxville recently, and he just had a tough week. I mean, he barely qualified for the features on the early nights, and he made the feature for Sunday, but retired early from the race. So to me, the racing was a little disappointing in my regard. I mean, it did look for a while like Superman wasn't going to win.
Was leading? Did Pierce lead that for a while?
Bruning was leading for quite a while. He led. I mean, it looked like he was going to get his first big win, and Superman had dropped back. I mean, he started on the started on the pole, and he dropped back to fourth, and he was a ways back. So I thought, okay, he's not going to get the win. And laps were winding down, and he just put it into another gear and ran him down and passed him for the win. And you know, you just got to take your hat off to him, I guess.
Inching closer to $2 million.
Yeah.
He's getting closer and closer. And it's Tuesday. We're doing the show. It's 40 grand to win tonight at Kokomo. So we'll see what happens there. Now, let's jump down to the Tom Tarleton Memorial for the World of Outlaw Sprint Cars. Did you happen to see it? I watched the highlights, and it was a highlight. Did you see the highlight?
No, I didn't see the highlight. You mentioned this to me before we started recording the show, that it was.
Remember, they were in California, is where they were. Home, Carson Macedo, right? California kid. Logan Schuchart threw a nasty one on him, nasty slider for the lead. And there was a lot of talk on Facebook. Was it dirty? Was it not dirty? He slid him good, and Macedo had to grab a whole bunch of brakes, and he drove into the back of them and kind of messed them both up. And Schuchart goes on to win. Well, he got booed, and people are yelling at him down in victory lane. And I'll play the clip right here so for you can all to listen to. But he basically said, "I'm still leaving with 21,000." So it is what it is, right?
Racing for the win. I want to watch the replay, but like I said, it's not how you want to win if I did something wrong, but I'll watch the replay and I'll determine what I did. Right now, I'll take any boos, cheers. I'm still going home with 21 grand. So see ya.
But exciting finish in the World of Outlaws, who quite honestly, some of the races haven't been quite as exciting this year, but they got a lot of racing left. We'll see what happens. Let's jump on to the huge week ahead, right? We're going to talk about the formats, but we can get into that another time, but this week regionally, right? There's some national stuff. We'll talk about that at the end. Is there anything going on over in Eastern Wisconsin this weekend?
141 Speedway has a 2-day special. I believe it's Friday and Saturday. I'm not sure if there's any other tracks that are running this weekend. I mean, in Eastern Wisconsin over the next several weekends, tracks will be having specials, but for the most part, tracks try not to schedule over the top of each other for their year-end specials.
Now, Western Wisconsin, this is a big week in Western Wisconsin. What's happening over there?
Well, actually, I mean, it's always a big weekend when it's Punky weekend, but it's extra special this year because the Mater 55 was rained out earlier this year. So they rescheduled that for, what is it, on Thursday of this week?
Thursday. Yep,
yeah.
Thursday.
So, I hope that, I mean, those are two big races, the Punky and the Mater. So, I mean, I hope that the fans come out and support. It's a little risky having two big shows, like right next to each other. So hopefully the fans will come out and support. I'm sure they'll support the Punky, but I just hope they come out earlier, a day early to take in the Mater race also.
Yeah, I think they will. And of course, if you can't catch that, Red Cedar Speedway, Menominee, Wisconsin, all of those races are on Dirt Race Central, the official streaming platform of the One to Go show and of WISSOTA Racing. Also this weekend, right? The Autumn Classic over at the baddest bull ring in the state of South Dakota, the Casino Speedway in Watertown. They're racing a full show Friday and Saturday. The 51st annual Jamestown Stock Car Stampede, that's going to be going on. I believe that's Friday, Saturday as well. I'm not sure what streaming platform Jamestown is on. It might be Darn TV, but Autumn Classic at Watertown is on Dirt Race Central as well. And then down at the Granite City Motor Park over at just right by St. Cloud, Minnesota, the Piston Cup is going on. That's a 2-day show. They moved that up a week because last year they ran that against Madison. This year they moved it up a week. And the Paul Bunyan Stampede up at the home of the Chicken Shack up in Bemidji. I tried talking Johnny Broken into coming to Casino to go head to head with TPO, but he's like, it's just too far. He's going to Bemidji. He's like, how do you pass up the chicken and the amazing culture over in Bemidji, Minnesota? Sheridan Speedway out in Wyoming. They got the Fall Classic coming up this weekend, a pair of shows out there. And then Thunder City Speedway, north of the border, Thunder Bay, Ontario, Canada. 3 complete shows of racing up there. That's going to be a big event. I mean, I don't know if there's a track in WISSOTA that gets as many Midwest mods as they do. Hopefully cars turn out for the other classes and we'll see what happens, but great to have racing back in Thunder Bay. And then down in Deer Creek, it's the Featherlight Fall Jamboree for the USMTS Modifieds. Always a good show. I tell you what, I picked a sleeper in that one in our pick'ems. A lot of people are picking O'Neill, Sorensen, Sanders, right? Ramirez. I went with a hot shoe right now, a rookie, Jim Chisholm. Tell you what, Chisholm. I mean, how do you go wrong? That's where me and Puka are from, Chisholm, right? But that kid's a stud, and Joe Chisholm in the USRA B mods, he's a stud too. So we'll see what happens there. So Bert, let's get into a little who's hot and who's not. Who's hot?
Well, we may have to make a rule that we can't pick this driver for the who's hot, but I'll go with him again this week. Superman. I mean, another, what was it, 50,000? Knoxville paid. So what can you say?
Getting closer and closer and closer. I'm gonna go with the Hermantown Hammer, Daryl Nelson. He's been strong during the invite season. He's won like every weekend, Labor Day weekend, Northern Nationals, Legendary 100, whether it's the mod, the late, or both. That 44 has been wicked fast. He's going to Menominee. It's not his house, right? But we'll see. Can he go 4 weekends in a row during invite time with a win? Stay tuned. Find out. Daryl Nelson's been really good. Who's not?
I mentioned him earlier. I'm going to go with Mike Marlar. I mean, earlier in the season, he had a streak of top 5s. And he's very strong at Knoxville, but he just had a rough weekend last weekend at Knoxville. And then earlier in the week, they had the Flo Castro race. Where was that at Falls? And he had to use a provisional to get into the feature there. So he's struggling a little bit right now, but all drivers have their ups and downs. Well, except Superman this year, I guess.
Right. So who's not? I'm going to say Iron Range Cars, Hibbing, Grand Rapids, such a huge culture of racing up there for so many years. During representation during invite time, there was a time when the range cars, whether it was super stocks, modifieds, late models, whatever, they represented so well at all the invitationals. And I don't know, it's just racing up there between Hibbing, Rapids, even Proctor, which isn't the range. You just don't see people traveling to these invitationals. And I get it, costs are up and all that, but there's other regions of WISSOTA that are represent a lot more than the range cars, and to me it's disappointing. That's home, and I'd like to see more of our guys, the guys that I see on a weekly basis going to some of these big specials, and kind of disappointing that's not the case. So one more thing on the who's hot. Dave Flynn had a rough year. One of the top talents in Superstock. He had a rough year this year. A lot of learning curves. Just things didn't go right. He had 3 top 5 finishes in the late model over at the Cedar Lake Speedway at the Legendary. So great weekend for Dave Flynn. So sure bet. And Bert, our sure bet is who? It's Jay Schmidt. Real Estate by Jay Schmidt. 4 racers, by racers. If you're in the Watertown area over in South Dakota, if you need land, commercial, residential, he's got over 20 years in business. Great racing family, great guy. Our lock of the week, our sure bet, Jay Schmidt is the guy that's going to take care of you. Jay Schmidt Real Estate. So Bert, what is your sure bet?
Well, I am staying with my sure bet that I had in August, but the race got rained out. AJ Demo will win the Mater race and become the first driver other than Jimmy Mars to win that race at Red Cedar Speedway. Now, granted, Buzzy Adams won it one year, but it was at Rice Lake Speedway that year.
So I kind of was going that direction, right? Because I had the 28 and 58. Jimmy Mars and AJ Demo will go 1-2 at both the Mater and at the Punky. Okay, that's them two are so almost nearly unbeatable at Menominee that it's not even close. But I'm going to go with another one, Maria Brooksick, who's had an outstanding season, a couple years in a row, some tough luck at the Autumn Classic. She's going to double up at Watertown this weekend in the 14 Street Stock. So let's jump into the last lap, brought to you by Zuli's Race Engines. And tell you what, they don't disappoint. They're on the podium. They run well. They win everywhere. There's going to be a lot of Zuli Race Engines in Victory Lane this weekend. I promise you, national champion in the street stocks, Kyle Dykoff. Zuli Race Engines, second in the street stocks. Of course, Justin Vogel. And they got a lot of power. If you can't beat them, join them. Zuli's Race Engines. So what do you got?
Well, I mean, earlier this year, we talked about how Jerry Munster won a heat race at Toronto Speedway. I think he's 81. But that's nothing compared to this driver who parked it in Victory Lane at the age of 89.
89. So the legendary Red Farmer, right? One of the original Alabama gang, right? He's part of that group. He's ties there. 89. Now, it wasn't the feature. He won the heat. But first of all, I think there's a lot of people out there going, I hope I live to 89. Let's just start there. 89, that's a long life. I hope I live that long, right? 189 would be better with the advances in modern science and all that. We'll see, right? But 89, that's a long life. To be even racing a car, period, even strapping in and racing a car at 89, that's astonishing. But to win a heat race at the age of 89, that's just super cool. I would love to get a load down to Alabama somewhere and figure out how to have a sit-down conversation with Red Farmer. I bet that cat's got some stories. And if he's racing, man, I would love to have that opportunity. So another thing we have here that I didn't have on the list, little tip of the cap, Red Clay Classic, Dirt Race Central stepping up to the plate, an extra $100 bonus to all heat winners at the Red Clay Classic. That's pretty cool. That's taking money that they earn at all these specials, put it back into the sport, giving it to the drivers. Great job to Ben and the gang at Dirt Race Central. What do you got next?
Well, I don't know what the drama is, but I heard there was some championship drama at River Cities. So
and
fill me in.
Sprint car action. Final night of the year for the championship. Jade Hastings and Mark Dobmeyer separated by like a point. I mean, it was super close, right? And of course it was. Photo finish at the line. I mean, too close to call. I talked to people and they said from the outside, from the grandstands, it looked like one guy won. From the infield, it looked like the other guy won, right? Well, everything's got transponders and all that, right? So no issues. There should be an issue. It's electronic scoring. So the electronic scoring comes out, boom, Jade Hastings wins, goes to Victory Lane. Not only did he win the race, he won the championship. They do all the hoopla. 10 minutes later or so, right? They're like, wait a second here. We had a little glitch in the scoring. This ain't good. Mark Dobmeyer actually won that race. Oh my God. Facebook went bonkers. They're like, well, yeah, Buffalo Wild Wings car, Buffalo Wild Wings sponsors the series. Of course he did, right? Well, it was all kinds of drama. Call the drivers up, and the drivers are like, hey, we're good with it. It is what it is. The fans were more upset than the drivers. Obviously, heartbreak for Jade Hastings. I don't know. I mean, ultimately, if that's the way that it actually finished, right, you want to get the call right. If you're racing for a champion, if it takes 10, 15 minutes, I'm going to say hats off to the scoring crew and the people over there at River Cities for at least getting it right. It sucks that it happened that way, but they got it right. Big drama, big moment. Mark Dobmeyer, your champion over at the River Cities. Now, podium finish for a cat here this weekend. Didn't go to Knoxville, but who finished on the podium this week? Who made it?
The Voodoo Child. I mean, we talked about this earlier, whether he would ever get a victory again, and he was one spot short from getting a victory.
Yeah, I tell you. So Scott Bloomquist, I mean, hats off. He actually made it to the race on time, so that's good. But the season's winding down. Is he going to go 2 years in a row without a win?
Unless he races some very small race, I don't see him getting a win.
And I saw an article somebody wrote, basically saying, everybody's hard on him because he ain't winning, but he's an old guy, right? He's up there in age. I mean, there's probably not many people that had a career like his, so everybody kind of slows down with time. It would be cool to see him get another one, though.
I mean, that's the unfortunate thing is, it's not just racing, but sports in general. You have your heroes and they're so good, but nobody beats Father Time. And, eventually your skills erode. I mean, things really went downhill for Bloomquist when he had that motorcycle accident. I think he would have had some wins and been more competitive longer if he wouldn't have had that accident, but that just kind of messed him up and physically. So
yeah, it sure did. So my buddy Dan was down at Knoxville, and they do a deal on Saturday where they'll have like 40, 50 people, and they have driver come in. Mike Marlar was a speaker, got to sit down and kind of have a casual, Dave Argabright was there interviewing them. Kind of a cool deal. If you get to the Knoxville Late Model Nationals, check that deal out because it's kind of fun to sit and listen to some of these drivers. But a lot of talk about that late model tire rule coming up. And he said that he's really looking forward to that because there's a lot of times where maybe a track rains out, like a Lucas race or a World of Outlaw race, but there's something reasonably close that he could race at, but he doesn't have the tires to go. Well, now if they're going to go with 4 compounds of tire throughout all of late model racing, maybe you'll see some of these top talents falling in at some different tracks because of that. That's something to keep an eye on in 2023. Little bit of news, Bert, in the late model world. A little bit of news.
Yeah, I hear you had your ear to the ground and you heard some news.
So as we know, Rocket One, right? Brandon Shepard is going to vacate that ride, and he's going back to the family team. Hudson O'Neill, I believe it's Double Down Motorsports, the Lazy Days RV ride. Hudson O'Neill is jumping out of that. He's going to drive Rocket One in 2023. So the question is, who's going to fill in his spot, right? Sources tell me, right? And this ain't public yet. This is not official, but you heard it here first, right? So if this comes to fruition, you heard it here on the One to Go show first, okay?
Wait. You're our Adam Schefter of...
There you go. You heard it here first, right? So with that said, Jimmy Owens, the Ramirez ride, of course, Leon Ramirez passed away last year, and Derek Ramirez is full tilt in the USMTS stuff. Rumor has it that team is no longer going to be operating a late model team in 2023. Sources tell me that Jimmy Owens is going to be jumping in to the Double Down Motorsports ride vacated by Hudson O'Neill. Will that increase it? I mean, do you think that'll put Owens back on the map?
I mean, it might. I mean, he's really had up and down years, both last year and this year. I mean, he'll go out and win a race, but then he'll go 3 weeks without finishing in the top 10. So it'd be nice to see him get into a ride where he can be competitive. And I mean, Hudson O'Neal's been competitive in that ride for the most part. So I don't think it would hurt him if that's the ride that he's in.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see. So we'll stay tuned. We got more to talk about with that as the season progresses. Current standings in our picks: Bert still on top, 133. Mr. Flat Bill himself, 125. I'm at 121. Jeff is at 116. Mike at 82. Brad at 70. If you're watching the show, you can see all the picks. We're doing a pile of races, Bert. Lucas races, World of Outlaw late models, World of Outlaw sprints, USMTS, the Punky, Autumn Classic. We're doing the Mater 55. There's a lot of racing going on this week. I feel like I'm going to catch you this week, Bert. You're a long ways ahead. Coming, man. I'm telling you, I'm coming for you. So with all the events coming up, I mean, Lucas Oil at Brownstown, World of Outlaw Lates at Boyd, World of Outlaw Sprints, Eldora and Sharon, Virginia Motor Speedway. That's not one we're picking, but Bert, they got a $50,000 to win crate late model race, right? Could you see somebody hopping in? Bronson, Owens, they both ran some crate stuff. Could you see a guy like, there's no 50 grand to win race for late models this weekend? Could you see Jonathan Davenport saying, you know what, I'm going to put a crate in 50 grand. I'll get closer to 2 million. I'm going to go get some crate money. Do you think any top tier teams are going to take a jump at that 50 grand crate race?
I don't know. I haven't seen anything about any teams going to that race. It would almost have to be a case where somebody puts a car together and they say, hey, you know, you come drive this car. But it'll be interesting to see if any, I mean, the names you mentioned, obviously, that they don't follow a series because the Outlaws and Lucas both have races this week. So it would have to be somebody not following either one of those series.
Correct. So with all that said, Bert, what are you looking forward to most this weekend?
Well, the Punky Manor race has always been a special race because MJ used to go race there every year, and we always had a lot of fun there. Fun racing, but fun after the races also. I think there were a few beverages that were consumed during that time, so that was always a fun race to go to. So I'm looking forward for that one, and then they're adding the Mater race the day before that, so that just adds a little bit more excitement to it.
Absolutely. And I'm looking forward to the Autumn Classic. I'm going out to Watertown myself. I'm going to be able to join my buddy Dave Nurmi up in the booth, do a little bit of announcing side by side with him. So that's always fun. Got a lot of friends out in Watertown, South Dakota. Look forward to seeing them. Going to go play golf with a buddy of mine, Josh, out there. So super excited to get back out to South Dakota. So any closing thoughts or anything else?
No, it's just there's a lot of racing going on, and if you have an opportunity, go out and support these races, because as sad as it sounds, it's not many months away that the white stuff is going to be falling.
Depends where you live, Bert. You just
well, that's true. That's true.
None of that nonsense going on in the South. So, hey, thanks for tuning in. Long show this week, but there was a lot of content, a lot of big racing, a lot of stuff coming up. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully, if you're driving on the road, that gave you a little bit of something to listen to. And put your comments, in the comments below, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube or whatever it may be. But as always, I'm Ryan. That's Bert. We're Pukalis. He's out getting his hat fixed. And thanks for tuning in to the One to Go Show.